"We're taking your cabin for the summer," my cousin announced in the family group chat. Everyone cheered at the idea. I watched them drive 8 hours up the mountain. Then I activated the new security system. The cameras caught their faces when, you know, that gut-wrenching moment when your world is about to be turned upside down and all you can do is watch? I felt it the instant I read that message in the family chat, casually announcing they were taking my beloved cabin for the summer. But what they didn't know was that I had a surprise waiting, and it was about to change everything. 3 years ago, my grandfather, Harold Anderson, left me his mountain cabin. It wasn't just a property, it was my childhood safe haven, a place filled with memories of him, my mentor, my confidant, the only person in my family who truly understood me. While my parents were always caught up in their careers, Grandpa taught me self-reliance, creative problem-solving, and the joy of solitude. When the lawyer told me the cabin was mine, not my parents', not anyone else's, but mine, I choked up. He'd said, and I quote, "Christine is the only one who will appreciate it for what it is, not what it could be worth." Those words meant everything. As a freelance graphic designer, I had the flexibility, but more importantly, I understood what he meant. This cabin represented freedom, creativity, peace. It wasn't a real estate opportunity or a vacation rental. It was a piece of my soul. But after Grandpa passed, the cabin was in rough shape. The roof leaked, the plumbing was a joke, and decades of mountain winters had taken their toll. My family scoffed. "It's a money pit," my mother warned. "You don't have the skills or resources," my father added. My cousin Allison even suggested I sell it to her husband's real estate company, for a family discount, of course. But I couldn't. This was my grandfather's legacy to me. So I poured nearly all my savings into it, hiring pros for the big stuff, but teaching myself everything else. Every weekend for a year, I drove 3 hours, watched countless tutorials, and made friends with local contractors. It wasn't just fixing a house, I was making it mine while honoring his memory. I updated the kitchen, but kept his rustic charm. I refreshed his hand-carved bookshelf, but preserved the Riverstone fireplace. This wasn't just renovation, it was a personal transformation. My family's interest, predictably, waxed and waned. First, they thought I was wasting my time. Then, as photos of my progress appeared on social media, suddenly there were offers to help, always with the unspoken expectation of using the cabin afterward. I politely declined. This was my project, my sanctuary. My family relationships have always been complicated. Family comes first was the mantra, but it always meant my boundaries came last. My cousins had a history of taking advantage. Borrowed clothes never returned, borrowed money never repaid, and the constant expectation that I'd always adjust my plans for them. Growing up, I was the selfish one whenever I dared to set a boundary. Over the years, I'd learned to create distance, maintaining contact only for holidays and the occasional family chat. Giving them too much information about my life was an open invitation for unsolicited opinions and interference. Last month, after hearing about some local vandalism, I invested in a top-of-the-line security system. Motion-activated cameras, a smart lock, floodlights, even a two-way communication system. Peace of mind, I thought. Little did I know, it would soon be my only defense. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Headphones on, deep in a design project, I ignored my buzzing phone for 2 hours. When I finally took a break, I found 63 new messages in the family group chat. 63. That alone was a red flag. I scrolled to the beginning and my stomach dropped. Perfect. Your mountain cabin is just sitting there. We're making it our summer home. Allison's message. Followed by a flood of excited responses. My aunt, that's a wonderful idea. The kids would love it. My uncle, count us in for the 4th of July. My mother, Christine hardly uses it anyway. It will be good to see the place full of family again. They were detailing plans, weeks allocated, meal plans, who was bringing what. Photos of my cousin's kids with packed suitcases, captioned, "Mountain Summer, here we come." Phrases like, "I can't believe we didn't think of this sooner," and "we should make this an annual tradition." Someone even asked, "Mom still has the old key from when Grandpa was alive, right?" My heart hammered. My hands trembled. I scrolled frantically, searching for any indication that anyone, had actually asked me. Nothing. Just my family planning to occupy my private property as if it were a communal timeshare. It was a familiar feeling, a violation dressed up as family closeness. Taking a deep breath, I typed a response, trying to be reasonable. Hi everyone, I noticed there are a lot of plans being made for my cabin. I actually have work scheduled there throughout the summer as it's my primary workspace. Also, I'd appreciate some advance notice for visits. This is all a bit confusing since no one asked me about availability. The replies were instant, dismissive. Allison, oh come on, Chris. You can work anywhere with your laptop. The kids are so excited. My mother, honey, don't be difficult. Family should be welcome anytime. My aunt, we won't disturb your things. Promise. We just want to enjoy the mountain air. My uncle, it's not like you're there all the time anyway. We saw your Instagram. You were in Charlotte all last week. Each message felt like another boundary being trampled. I tried again. I understand everyone is excited, but this is my home. I've put thousands of dollars and countless hours into renovating it. I have client deadlines. I need to know when people are planning to be there, and, honestly, I'd prefer to be present when others are using the cabin. Then, the tone shifted. My father, you're overreacting. It's just family. Allison, don't be so selfish. Think of the kids. My aunt, Harold would want the whole family to enjoy the cabin, not just one person. Weaponizing my grandfather's memory against me. My chest tightened. As I tried to formulate a response that wouldn't involve me screaming into my phone, a final message from Allison appeared. We're leaving first thing tomorrow morning. 8-hour drive. So excited. Kids are already packed. Thomas and Melanie are meeting us there. Should be 6 adults and 7 kids total for the first week. Mom and Dad might drive up this weekend, too. 8-hour drive? The cabin was only 3 hours from Charlotte. Then it clicked. Allison had moved to Atlanta last year. She was driving 8 hours with her family to my cabin without my permission. This wasn't per boundaries. This was a planned invasion. Shaking, I called my mother. If anyone could talk sense into Allison, it was her sister. But I needed my mom's support first. Mom, I said, my voice tight, this situation with the cabin is out of control. Allison is packing to drive to my property without my permission. There was a pause. Then a sigh. Christine, it's just for the summer. I don't see why you're making such a fuss. Making a fuss? Mom, it's my property. Grandpa left it to me, not the whole family. Well, that was his choice. But family shares, Christine. You've always been so territorial about your things. My heart sank. She wasn't going to support me. Besides, she continued, it's not like you live there full time. It's a vacation home, and family should be welcome at family vacation homes. It's not a vacation home, I insisted. It's my second residence and my workplace. I've invested everything in restoring it. The conversation went nowhere. After 10 minutes of circular arguments, I ended the call and dialed Allison. She answered, her voice falsely bright. Christine, I was just about to text you our arrival time tomorrow. We should get there around 4 p.m. Allison, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, you cannot stay at my cabin tomorrow or any day without my explicit permission. I have not given that permission. In fact, I'm telling you directly that the cabin is not available. She laughed, as if I were joking. Oh, come on. It's family. We're not strangers breaking in. That's exactly what you'll be doing, I insisted. I have not given you permission to enter my property. Her tone hardened. Look, everyone's already taken time off work. The kids are packed. We've been planning this for weeks. Weeks? And in all those weeks, it never occurred to you to ask me first. I mentioned it to your mom, she said dismissively. She thought it was a great idea. My mother doesn't speak for me, and she doesn't own my cabin. God, you're being so dramatic. My kids are 8, 10, and 12. They've been talking about nothing else for days. Are you really going to disappoint children? The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost laughable. Except there was nothing funny about it. I'm not disappointing anyone. You set your children up for disappointment by promising them something that wasn't yours to give. We're coming, Christine, she said, her voice now cold. You can either be reasonable about this or not, but we're coming. The whole family agrees this is a perfect solution for summer plans. Before I could respond, she hung up. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts from various family members. The coordinated pressure campaign had begun. Aunt Patricia, your cousin tells me you're being difficult. Remember how generous Harold always was? He would be so disappointed. Uncle Robert, don't understand the problem. Don't make this weird. Cousin Thomas, my kids have been talking about fishing all week. Don't be the bad guy. Uncle James, if it's about money, we can chip in for utilities, but family property should be for family. Each message twisted the knife deeper. I was selfish, unreasonable, betraying my grandfather's memory. Around 8 p.m., my Aunt Margaret, the self-proclaimed family mediator, called. Christine, dear, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Aunt Margaret. My family is attempting to use my private property without permission. That's trespassing. She laughed softly. Goodness, such harsh language for family. No one is trespassing. We're just looking to spend some quality time in the mountains, at my home, without my invitation or consent, I added. Well, perhaps there should have been more communication, she conceded slightly. But plans are already in motion. Allison's family is driving up tomorrow. Surely you can be flexible just for this summer. I have installed a security system, I informed her. No one will be able to enter without my authorization. A pause. A security system? Don't you think that's a bit extreme for a family cabin? Harold never locked the doors. Things change. There's been vandalism. Well, she said, her voice cooling, I think you're overreacting. No one is going to damage your precious cabin. It's family for goodness sake. After more fruitless back and forth, I ended the call. As I scrolled through more messages, I noticed something disturbing. Several people had referenced specific features of the cabin they couldn't have known about unless someone had shared details. With growing horror, I realized they had been passing around the address and information about my private residence. I sent a final message to the group. I want to be absolutely clear. The cabin is not available for family use this summer. I have not and will not give permission for anyone to enter the property. Please respect my boundaries and my property rights. The responses were immediate and hostile. Allison, too late. We're already packed and leaving at 5 a.m. If you're so concerned, drive up and join us. Otherwise, stop being dramatic. My mother, Christine, enough. This isn't like you. Why are you being so selfish? My father, your behavior is embarrassing. This isn't how we raised you. By midnight, I was physically ill from stress. My hands trembled, my stomach was in knots, and I had a pounding headache. I spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The last message I saw before an uneasy sleep was from Allison. We're all adults here. We'll take good care of the place. See you tomorrow, maybe? As I finally drifted off around 4 a.m., one thing became clear. Reasoning with them wasn't going to work. They had no intention of respecting my boundaries. Tomorrow would require a different approach. The shrill notification from my phone jolted me awake at 9:30 a.m. An alert from my cabin security system. Motion detected on the front path. My heart raced. I opened the app, expecting a deer, maybe a delivery. Instead, I saw a car I didn't recognize pulling up my driveway. Before I could process it, my phone buzzed with a text from Carl, my neighbor. Your family arriving with loads of luggage. Quite a crowd. Didn't know you were expecting company. Want me to help them get settled? I texted back quickly. Not expected. Not invited. Do not help them get in. Call me. My phone rang seconds later. Christine, what's going on? Carl's voice was concerned. My family has decided to use my cabin for the summer. Without asking me, I explained, my voice tight. They literally announced their plans yesterday and ignored my objections. Well, they can't get in without a key, right? That's what I'm about to find out, I replied, switching to the security app. What I saw sent waves of panic through me. 3 cars were now parked in my driveway. I counted 12 people, including children, running around the property. Allison was directing them like a cruise director. Her husband, Jason, was trying the front door, then checking under rocks for a key. My cousin Thomas and his wife Melanie were unloading coolers. Their kids were already trampling the native plant garden I'd carefully cultivated. Oh my God, I whispered, watching this invasion of my private sanctuary in real time. Christine, you still there? Carl's voice seemed distant. They're trying to break in, I said, my voice hollow. They're looking for hidden keys and checking windows. Want me to call the sheriff? Carl offered. Not yet, I replied. Let me try something first. I watched in horrified fascination as Jason moved around the cabin, trying each window. Most were locked, but he was determined. The children had moved to the back deck, their voices faintly audible through the security system's microphones as they peered through the glass doors. Allison was on her phone, gesturing animatedly. She was probably calling my mother, trying to get information on how to access the cabin. The sense of violation was overwhelming. My private space, my sanctuary, the place I had poured my heart and savings into, was being treated like public property. My hands began to shake so badly I had to put the phone down. A flood of memories rushed in, Allison. Returning my new sweater with a cigarette burn, Thomas deleting my college essay, countless belongings taken without consent because family shares. My entire body vibrated with rage and helplessness. Tears streamed down my face as I picked up the phone again. That's when I saw Jason examining a side window more carefully. He pulled out what looked like a small tool. He's trying to force a window, I told Carl, who was still on the line. That's breaking and entering, Carl said firmly. I'm calling the sheriff. Wait, I said, clarity suddenly cutting through my emotional turmoil. I have another idea. In that moment, I remembered Grandpa's words. Christine, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow. Don't get mad. Get clear. Set your boundaries and hold them, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. He wouldn't want his cabin used as a battleground, but he also wouldn't want my boundaries trampled. He left it to me because he trusted my judgment. It was time to honor that trust. With newfound resolve, I wiped my tears and focused on the security system's control panel on my phone. The expensive system I'd installed was about to prove its worth in a way I never anticipated. I navigated to the master control panel. The system included motion-activated cameras, floodlights, smart locks, and an alert system with outdoor speakers. It even featured a two-way communication function. I never imagined using these features against my own family, but their actions had forced my hand. I watched Jason still working at the window, the children running around, Allison directing the whole operation like she owned the place. Taking a deep breath, I activated the system's emergency protocol. Immediately, powerful floodlights around the property blazed to life, despite the morning sun. An ear-piercing alarm began blaring from multiple speakers strategically placed around the cabin's exterior. Then, the automated message began playing at high volume. This is a security alert. Unauthorized presence detected on private property. Local security service has been notified. Please vacate the premises immediately. Through the cameras, I watched the chaos unfold. The children froze, then several began crying, covering their ears. The adults spun around, looking for the source. Jason jumped back from the window, nearly falling off the garden wall. Allison stood in the center of the driveway, mouth agape, looking up at the nearest speaker. Thomas grabbed his youngest child, scanning the property with wide eyes. Melanie and the other adults began shepherding the children toward the cars. Several neighbors, including Carl, had emerged from their cabins to investigate the commotion. It was time to make my presence known. I pressed the button for the two-way communication system and spoke clearly, attention. This is Christine Anderson, the legal owner of this property. You are currently trespassing on private property. I have not given permission for anyone to enter or use this cabin. You need to leave immediately. The effect was immediate. Everyone froze, looking up at the speakers in disbelief. Allison recovered first, her face contorting with anger as she scanned the property, presumably looking for cameras. Christine, turn this off right now, she shouted. You're scaring the children. I continued through the speaker system, my voice calm but firm. A security service has been dispatched and will arrive shortly. I have video evidence of attempted forced entry, which is a criminal offense. Please return to your vehicles and leave the property immediately. Jason approached one of the cameras, his face inches from the lens. This is ridiculous. We're family, not criminals. Turn this system off right now. Please step away from the security equipment, I responded. Tampering with security systems is also an offense. You have 5 minutes to vacate the property before the security service arrives. This wasn't entirely true. I hadn't actually called them yet, but they were on retainer, one button press away. I wanted to give my family a chance to leave voluntarily. The children were all crying or scared. Some adults began moving toward the cars, rethinking the situation, but Allison stood her ground, furiously typing on her phone. My phone rang. It was Allison. I switched from the speaker system to take her call. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "Protecting my property from trespassers," I replied calmly. "We are not trespassers. We are your family. Turn off these alarms right now. You're terrifying the children." The children wouldn't be terrified if you hadn't brought them to a property you had no permission to enter, I pointed out. The alarms will stop when you leave. You've completely overreacted. Allison spat. We were just trying to have a nice family summer. Now you've embarrassed all of us in front of the neighbors and traumatized the kids. I made it clear yesterday that my cabin was not available. You chose to ignore me and come anyway. These are the consequences of your actions, not mine. I'm going to call Mom, she threatened. Everyone in the family is going to hear about this. Feel free to tell them how you attempted to occupy my home without permission and got caught, I replied. Now, please leave before I need to call local law enforcement in addition to the security service. Through the security cameras, I could see that most of the adults were moving luggage back into cars. The children were being loaded, some still crying. Only Allison and Jason remained defiant. This isn't over, Allison warned before hanging up. True to my word, 2 minutes later, a car with the local security company's logo pulled up. I quickly connected with them through the app to explain the situation. "Miss Anderson, we received an alert about possible trespassers at your property," the officer said. "Yes, unfortunately, some people showed up uninvited and attempted to enter my cabin. I've asked them to leave, but they're being resistant. We'll handle it," the officer assured me. "Would you like us to contact local law enforcement as well?" "Not at this time," I decided. "Let's see if they'll leave peacefully first." I watched through the cameras as the security officer approached Allison and Jason, who immediately began talking over each other, gesturing wildly. The officer remained calm, checking identification and speaking into his radio. After a tense conversation, Allison and Jason finally moved toward their car, faces flushed with anger. Within 15 minutes of the alarm first sounding, all 3 cars were packed up. The security officer returned to his vehicle, but remained parked at the edge of the property, ensuring everyone left. As the cars began to pull away, my phone exploded with calls and messages. I ignored them all. The immediate crisis was handled, but I knew this wasn't over. After a brief discussion with the security service, I decided to drive up to the cabin myself. It was a 3-hour drive, but I needed to see the property in person and make sure there was no damage. More importantly, I needed to face this situation head-on. Running away had never been my grandfather's style, and it wouldn't be mine either. As I packed a bag, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, adrenaline fading, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Anxiety about the confrontation that might await me. But underneath it all, a fierce determination. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family's boundary violations in a way that couldn't be ignored. I arrived just after 1 p.m. The security officer was still there, having stayed to ensure the family didn't return. To my dismay, all 3 cars were still parked about 100 yards down the road, just off my property. They refused to leave the area, the officer explained. "I've informed them they can't return to your property, but they're insisting on speaking with you when you arrive. I can call for police backup if you'd prefer." I took a deep breath. "No, that's all right. I'll talk to them. Thank you for staying." As I pulled into my driveway, I saw movement from the parked cars. Doors opened and adults emerged. The children remained inside, faces pressed against windows, watching. Allison, Jason, Thomas, and Melanie approached the edge of my property, stopping at the boundary marked by my rustic split-rail fence. Their expressions ranged from angry to uncomfortable to outright hostile. The security officer stood nearby as I exited my car and walked toward them. The tension in the air was palpable. "Christine," Allison began immediately, her voice tight with restrained fury. "I can't believe you would embarrass us like this, calling security on your own family. What is wrong with you?" I looked at her calmly. "I told you clearly that you did not have permission to enter my property. You chose to ignore me and come anyway." "It's a family cabin," she insisted. "No, it's my cabin," I corrected. "Grandpa left it to me, not to the family collectively." Thomas stepped forward. "Come on, Christine. We just wanted to give the kids a nice summer experience. Is that really so terrible that you needed to traumatize them with alarms and security guards?" "I'm sorry the children were frightened," I said sincerely. "But they wouldn't have been in that situation if you had respected my clear communication yesterday." "You've always been selfish," Melanie said, speaking up for the first time. "Even as a kid, you never wanted to share anything." "This isn't about sharing," I replied. "This is about basic respect for boundaries and property rights. You wouldn't walk into a stranger's house uninvited. The fact that we're related doesn't change the principle." Jason, who had been quietly seething, suddenly burst out. "Do you have any idea how much time we took off work for this? How much planning went into this trip? The kids have been looking forward to this for weeks. Planning that happened entirely without consulting me, the owner of the property," I pointed out. "That's the fundamental problem here. You made plans involving my home without my knowledge or consent." "Harold would be ashamed," Allison said, her voice low and cutting. "He always welcomed family at the cabin. Always." That comment stung, but I held my ground. Grandpa welcomed invited guests. He didn't appreciate boundary violations, and he left the cabin to me because he trusted my judgment. My neighbor Carl chose that moment to approach, carrying his morning coffee. "Everything okay over here, Christine?" "Just a family disagreement," I explained. "More than a disagreement," Carl said, turning to my relatives. "I saw your husband trying to force that side window open," he said, nodding toward Jason. "Where I come from, that's breaking and entering." Jason's face reddened. "I was just checking if it was locked." "You were locked out?" "You were never locked out," I corrected. "You were never invited in. There's a difference." "This is ridiculous." Allison fumed. "We're going to speak to a lawyer about this. You can't just inherit family property and keep it all to yourself." "Actually, she can," said the security officer who had been quietly observing. "The deed is in Miss Anderson's name alone. Legally, this is her private property, and you have no right to access it without her permission." "We'll see about that," Jason muttered. I looked at my family members, really looked at them, and felt a strange sense of clarity. Their anger wasn't really about the cabin itself. It was about the disruption to the family dynamic. For years, I had been the one who gave in, who accommodated, who adjusted my boundaries to keep the peace. By standing firm now, I had upset the established order. "I think it's time for you all to leave," I said firmly. "I've made my position clear. The cabin is not available for family use without my explicit invitation." "And what are we supposed to do now?" Thomas demanded. "We've taken time off work. The kids are expecting a vacation." "That's not my responsibility," I replied. "You created this situation by making plans involving my property without asking me. There are plenty of rental cabins in the area." "At peak season prices?" "That's just great," Melanie said sarcastically. "I'm sorry your lack of planning has created difficulties for you," I said. "But I'm not changing my position." Allison's face hardened. "You'll regret this, Christine. When you need family support, don't come running to us." The threat hung in the air. Part of me wanted to point out that family support shouldn't be conditional on allowing boundary violations. But I recognized that further discussion would be pointless. "I think we're done here," I said instead. "Please leave." For a moment, Allison looked like she might say something else, but Jason put a hand on her arm. "Let's go. This isn't worth it." The adults turned and walked back to their cars. Through the windows, I could see the disappointed faces of the children watching the drama unfold. That was the hardest part, knowing the kids were caught in the middle. But I also knew that allowing my boundaries to be violated wasn't the solution. The drive back to Atlanta would be long and tense for those families. Part of me felt guilty about the children's disappointment, but a stronger part recognized that their parents had created this situation, not me. As the cars finally pulled away, the security officer approached. "Would you like me to stay longer, Miss Anderson? We can arrange extended monitoring if you're concerned about them returning." "No, that won't be necessary," I said, suddenly feeling exhausted. "I think they've gotten the message." After thanking the officer and Carl, I finally entered my cabin. Everything was as I had left it, untouched by the invasion attempt. The familiar scent of pine and the quiet creaking of the wooden floors welcomed me home. I sank into my grandfather's old armchair, the one piece I had kept exactly as it was, and felt the emotional weight of the day crash over me. Relief that my sanctuary remained intact. Pride in standing my ground. Sadness that it had come to this with my family. Anxiety about the fallout that would surely follow. My phone showed 23 missed calls and over 50 unread messages, most from family members. My mother had called 7 times alone. I put the phone down without responding to anyone. Those conversations could wait. For now, I needed time to process what had happened and find my center again. As evening fell, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the fireflies emerge, just as I had done with my grandfather years ago. The mountains were cast in purple shadow, the air cooling with that particular fresh scent that always made this place feel magical. "You did good, kiddo," I could almost hear my grandfather say. "Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary." In the quiet of the mountain evening, surrounded by the sanctuary I had created, I began to find peace with my decision. The cabin was still mine. My boundaries had been maintained, even if it cost me some family goodwill. Some prices were worth paying. The weeks following what I now call the invasion attempt were challenging. The family group chat went silent after an initial explosion of messages, accusing me of everything from mental instability to criminal behavior. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I had humiliated my cousins and traumatized my nieces and nephews. My father sent a stern email expressing his disappointment in my selfish and immature behavior. I responded to none of it. Instead, I stayed at the cabin for 2 weeks, working remotely and giving myself space to process. The silence was healing. Each day without family drama felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Gradually, individual messages began trickling in. My younger sister, Emily, who had been notably absent from the cabin scheme, reached out first. "That sounds intense." For what it's worth, I think they were totally out of line. "Grandpa left you the cabin for a reason. Love you." Her simple support meant more than she could know. My cousin Marcus, another family outlier, sent a brief message. "Heard about the cabin situation. Respect for standing your ground. They'll get over it." Even my Uncle David, my father's brother, who had always been the quiet one, surprised me with a thoughtful email. "Christine, while I don't approve of how things escalated with the security system, I want you to know I understand why you felt backed into a corner. The cabin is legally yours, and the family should have respected that. Give everyone time to cool down." These small gestures of understanding helped, but they couldn't erase the larger pattern of boundary violations that had characterized my family relationships for years. After returning to Charlotte, I made an appointment with a therapist specializing in family dynamics. Dr. Lawson helped me see the patterns more clearly. "What you're describing is a family system that doesn't respect individual boundaries," she explained. "Your grandfather seems to have recognized this dynamic, which may be why he left you the cabin directly rather than making it family property." "Everyone keeps saying I'm selfish for not sharing," I told her. "There's a difference between generosity and allowing yourself to be taken advantage of," she replied. "Healthy relationships require mutual respect. From what you've described, your family expects you to accommodate their wishes without extending the same consideration to you." Over the following months, Dr. Lawson helped me develop strategies for maintaining boundaries without unnecessary conflict. We worked through my feelings of guilt and the deep-seated belief that standing up for myself was somehow wrong or selfish. I also discovered an online community of people with similar experiences. Sharing my story anonymously, I received an outpouring of support. My siblings tried to claim our father's house after he left it to me, one user wrote. Standing firm was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the right decision. 3 years later, 2 of them have actually apologized. Another shared, family entitlement is real. You're not crazy for wanting control over your own property. The fact that they attempted to enter without permission says everything about the dynamic. Reading these stories provided validation I hadn't realized I needed. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't wrong to protect what was mine. As summer turned to fall, I continued reclaiming my relationship with the cabin itself. I painted the kitchen cabinets a cheerful blue. Grandpa would have called it impractical, but pretty. I replaced the old deck furniture with pieces I had carefully selected to reflect my taste. Each change, no matter how small, felt like a declaration. This is mine. Mine to change, mine to preserve, mine to share only when and with whom I choose. The isolation I had initially feared never fully materialized. Instead, I found myself developing genuine friendships with my cabin neighbors. Carl and his wife Diane invited me for dinner, introducing me to other property owners who respected boundaries and understood the concept of invitation. We've all had family members who think our vacation homes are their vacation homes, laughed Joanna, who owned a cabin about a mile away. That's why most of us don't share our door codes anymore. These new connections were refreshing, built on mutual respect and genuine interest rather than obligation. When I invited a small group over for a cookout on my new deck, the joy of hosting on my own terms was revelatory. These people were there because I wanted them to be, and they had accepted because they wanted to come. No manipulation, no guilt, no expectations beyond a pleasant evening. The contrast with my family's entitled approach couldn't have been starker. By Thanksgiving, the family tensions had cooled somewhat. My mother called to discuss holiday plans without mentioning the cabin incident directly. I kept the conversation pleasant but non-committal, applying the techniques Dr. Lawson and I had practiced. I agreed to attend the family dinner, but made it clear I would be staying at a hotel, not at my parents' house as usual. That seems unnecessary, my mother commented. We have plenty of room. I prefer having my own space, I replied, simply offering no further explanation or apology. The slight pause before she accepted my decision felt like progress. The holiday itself was awkward but manageable. Allison and her family had chosen to spend Thanksgiving with her husband's relatives, which simplified things considerably. I left early, returning to my hotel room with a sense of accomplishment rather than the emotional exhaustion these gatherings usually produced. As winter settled over the mountains, I spent Christmas at the cabin, inviting only Emily and her boyfriend. The quiet celebration, free from family drama and expectations, was the most peaceful holiday I could remember. We hiked in the snow, cooked elaborate meals, and talked openly about family patterns without the pressure of the entire clan's presence. You know, Emily said on their last evening, sitting by the fireplace, I used to think you were overreacting about how the family treats you, but seeing how much happier you are now, standing up for yourself, I get it, and I'm kind of inspired by it. Her words meant everything to me. By spring, the cabin had fully become my sanctuary again. The security system remained in place, but it no longer represented fear or defensiveness. Instead, it symbolized my right to protect what was mine, to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. Some family relationships had changed, perhaps permanently. Allison still maintained a chilly distance. My parents had accepted my boundaries, but clearly didn't understand them. Others, like Emily and Uncle David, had grown closer through their support. I had learned that healthy boundaries sometimes meant losing relationships that were built on unhealthy dynamics. While that loss carried its own grief, it made room for connections based on mutual respect and genuine caring. On a warm evening in early May, almost a year after the confrontation, I sat on my grandfather's porch, sipping tea from one of his old mugs. The mountains were vibrant with spring growth, birds calling in the twilight. I thought about how much had changed, not just in the cabin, but in me. My grandfather had given me more than property. He had given me the opportunity to learn my own worth, to stand firm in the face of pressure, to create a life based on self-respect rather than accommodation. The cabin was the catalyst. But the real transformation had happened within me. "Thank you," I whispered to the evening air, certain that somehow, somewhere, he understood. The peace I felt in that moment was hard-won but complete. I had protected what mattered to me. Not just the physical space of the cabin, but my right to set boundaries and have them respected. The relationships that remained in my life were healthier for it, and I was stronger. As night fell over the mountains, I made a silent promise to myself and to my grandfather's memory. I would continue to honor both the cabin and myself by maintaining those boundaries, not with anger or defensiveness, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows her own worth. And that, my friends, is the story of how a security system, a little defiance, and a whole lot of courage helped me finally claim my peace. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who just didn't respect your boundaries? Let me know in the comments below.